Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're doing another civilization overview today. And this time we are going over Hausa, holding one of my favorite custom made flags in all of my custom made flags. Now, Hausa is one of the most unique civilizations in the game, right alongside Ethiopia. It's its little cousin there, which they were both released at the same time as the African royals. So let's get into it without any further ado. For their unique mechanics, just like Ethiopia, they have the livestock market. So this is a market and a livestock pen put together as one, and it comes with the added bonus of being able to trade livestock for resources. So how this works is you can trade livestock for either wood or coin, and wood and coin separately have like a stock price that's listed on the left side of your screen that slowly goes up in value. So when the stock price is at 100%, then that means that when you trade a cattle, you get one for one how much food that cattle is worth for coin or wood. So for example, if you have a fully fattened Sengu cattle that has 500 food in it, you can trade that for 500 coin. And then every time you trade something at the livestock, the stock price value goes down to say like 60, 70%. And then it slowly has to trickle back up to get to 100 before you really want to sell again. And that's kind of how it works. You can use this in the beginning of the game to get to sell a cattle for like an easy 200 wood, or you could use it to get an easy 300 upon reaching age 2 and do a fast fortress with 700 coin. There's lots of ways you can go about this, and the livestock market is a very important part to Hausa's playstyle, which is important because Hausa's unique civilization bonus is that they get a free cattle with every shipment. So Hausa, in particular, really leans into the livestock market as a mechanic a lot more than Ethiopia does. Whereas Ethiopia has to train their cattle, and as such, they really only trade a few times each game, from my understanding. Hausa is just a lot easier to go about it, and Hausa leans into the livestock market mechanic a lot more. Now, Hausa and Ethiopia also have the influence mechanic. So influence is a fourth resource, just like export for the Asian dynasty civilizations. And it's just like the export. It is used for units and unique upgrades. However, you get a lot more influence throughout the game, and instead of getting packs of unit upgrades and super valuable, and just like super crazy valuable upgrades, the upgrades are generally a lot more tame for Hausa and Ethiopia. You're not going to get anything crazy like Japan's ability to train 10 units at the same time. But you get a lot more of the influence, and so you can spend it a lot more. You can use it to do things like train. You can use it to do things like train unique units from your palace, as well as mercenaries, or you can also use it to train even things like falconets, or allow unique upgrades at your civilization. For example, Hausa have the ability to train Hausa builders, which are basically just building wagons that you can use for a variety of buildings. And then, as for how you get influence, there are several ways to go about it. Hausa has two main ways. One is through the cattle that we mentioned previously. Each cattle that you have that's alive provides a steady trickle of influence, and when they are fully fattened, they provide a larger trickle of influence. And then Hausa's other unique way of getting influence is the university, which is also the building you use to spend it usually. Now, the university and the palace. The palace is like an outpost in a fort, like had a baby. So the university is a unique Hausa building. It generates influence, but specifically, it's a base building tool because it generates influence for every as long as the amount of influence it generates is increased as long as you have a palace, a town center, or a trade post in its radius. And this is really really cool, actually, because each town center, palace, and trade post will only add once to each to each university that you build. So you could have one town center, one trade post, and one palace next to one university to get the max benefits, and then halfway across the map you could have another university that's maxed out with a single town center, trade post, and palace. It's a very cool mechanic, actually, how the university works. Now, the general playstyle of Hausa is that they can do whatever the fuck they want, and really that is kind of the theme that we have seen with both the updates for older civilizations as well as all the newer civilizations to be released, is that the devs very much so want all of the civilizations to have a larger variety of playstyles. They want to end the idea, for example, that Ottoman is a rush civ that only rushes or does like cheesy fast industrials. They want everybody to be able to perform a large variety of strategies. Which honestly, when I see general playstyle and I have to write whatever they want, I view that as a very positive thing for the game, and I view that as something that I want to keep seeing. Now, as for the age-up system of Hausa and Ethiopia, they have alliances, which are kind of based off of federal states, but whereas federal states offered unique cards to be added to the United States deck, alliances add unique units to your palace and or unique upgrades to your university that you can research for influence. Their explorer is the Raz or the Emir. I'm not really sure. I don't really care. I don't really play Hausa that much. But that is their explorer. Their explorer is a goon class. They are a ranged cavalry. They start out with a slower movement speed in age 1 and then get their full movement speed upon hitting age 2. Previously, they had a higher multiplier against Treasure Guardians, but that got removed so that it's in line with the rest of the Explorers. And then instead of a crack shot, they have the Chaos ability, which basically just makes Treasure Guardians fight each other for a few seconds while you can get some pot shots off. The Chaos ability can be just crazy powerful, especially if you have any military units with you to shoot into the said Treasure Guardian units. However, I find that in age 1 at the very beginning of the game, it's not super helpful because Treasure Guardians suck at killing each other because for the most part they are so heavily weighted towards HP compared to damage. Is one problem. Is that they're just not very good at killing each other, and then in age 1 your Emir is going to be probably alone and not having enough damage in order to take out enough of the dudes while they are fighting each other. But once you get to age 2, this ability goes from being, like one of the worst treasure hunting abilities in age 1 to being one of the best, because as soon as you have any sort of damage output or units to support your explorer, the sheer power of Chaos gets nuts to where you can basically take any treasure you want right in the second age. It's pretty crazy. As for unique units, they have a lot more. They have a lot of unique units, but I didn't want to bother showing all of them because that would take like an age and a half. So I just kind of picked like the main ones. So they have for their heavy infantry, their representatives from the heavy infantry are the Akan in the top left with a red box around them, and the Maigadi in the bottom right with no red box around them. The Akan and the Maigadi are very solid units. The Maigadi is essentially just a superpower musketeer without any multipliers against cavalry, and they're very upgradable through various Hausa cards that even allow them to get multipliers against mercenaries. So these guys are a very strong fighting force, and especially a very strong fighting force if you are facing anything like if you are facing anything involving mercenaries. They are a 2-pop musketeer with the stats to match. They're kind of like soldados, like they're kind of like soldados, but like they came out first, so it's kind of like they're not soldados as much as they're like the beta test for soldados, if you will. The Akan are ridiculous. So Hausa are not the only civilization to have the Akan, because the Akan is tied to the Akan minor civilization. The Akan Akanobas are a ranged musketeer type unit that anybody can train by getting the Akan native settlements. However, by aging up with an alliance, Hausa gains the ability to train Akan from their palace, and completely ignore the native build limit in exchange for the Akan costing populations. They basically just have the option to get this native unit as like part of their normal generic military. Now, what the Akan does is that it's a musketeer type unit with with an area of effect attack, which is freaking huge. The Akan are absolutely nuts when they are massed, because they will fight on even terms with just about everything in the game. Even skirmishers that are supposed to counter them, because they simply just area of effect and splash damage every single unit on the enemy team. Akan are just absolutely terrifying when they are massed, and I don't see enough Hausa players using them. For their skirmisher, they have the Fulani Archer. Fulani Archers are basically just like fast shooting archers. There's really not too much else to say about them. They're good at their job. They do fine work. There's really not too much to say about them. They're just like, they're a skirmisher unit, you know. For their Dragoon equivalents, they have the Javelin Rider. This is a shared unit with Ethiopia. The Javelin Rider is amazing. The Javelin Rider is a 1-pop Dragoon, just like the Rider, but tankier and with a 1.5 rate of fire. So they're pretty nuts, and the only reason you don't see them more is because Hausa doesn't exactly have an S-tier skirmisher to pair with it. For example, like Dutch, you'll see Skirm Goon all the time, and while the Dutch skirmishers are not the strongest skirmishers in the game, they are very, very strong skirmishers in the game, and they're paired with, and of course they're paired with Reuters, which helps their case more so. Javelin Riders are very much so the Reuters case, where they can elevate a Skirm Goon combo because they exist, but the Fulani Archer is, I have never really experienced too many situations where I think to myself, at least me personally, man, the Fulani Archer is as good as a normal skirmisher. It's a very fine unit. It is a good unit. It does its job. It's not the best unit that Hausa has access to. But, you know, when they're massed, they still do whatever they want. And then the last two unique units located on the top right and the bottom middle. We'll start with the bottom middle, is the Raider. The Raider is a one population heavy cavalry unit that has a very large amount of attack for a one population unit. These things are very easy to mass, and they have an absolutely crazy amount of DPS, especially once they get carded. Over on the top right is the Lafidi Knights. Lafidi Knights are like the antithesis to Ulans, whereas Ulans have very low HP in exchange for a very high attack. Lafidi Knights have a pretty low attack, although still serviceable, in exchange for having a stupid large amount of HP. Like, they have like 480 or 460 base HP in the second age. It's a little nuts. Lafidi Knights are extremely powerful at just soaking up hits on the battlefield, and even their one weakness of having low damage can be circumvented through cards that allow them to have area of effect attacks. Lafidi Knights additionally have both range and melee resistance, so they're really just tanky against everything, and there's not too much you can do about them. I give the Lafidi Knight and the Akan the red squares for being the best units that Hausa has access to. Granted, I must say that this is only coming from the perspective of only somebody who plays with and against Hausa and never playing as them, so this could be wrong here, and I'm sure somebody in the comment section will be like, you forgot about X unit and they're really broken, and I'd be like, yeah, I did, because I don't know the Civ as well as I know other Civs. The same goes for Ethiopia, but overall, I just know these civilizations less than other civs, and there's really not too much else I can say about that. I do still know that I do know their mechanics, I do know their units. I'm not super familiar with the ins and outs of them, though. You'd have to ask somebody more familiar about that. The primary unit composition is that they can just do whatever they want. They have the China thing going on where they can just do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and it all works out. But they have a lot. They have a smaller unit roster compared to China, whereas China has like a billion different units that each have one specific purpose. It's more like these guys have a smaller core of unique units with a little extras here and there that are all stupid good and can be used in whatever ways you want. But regardless of the quote-unquote anything you want, the one thing you can usually guarantee with Hausa is that heavy cavalry is probably going to be part of it somewhere. So just be on the lookout for Lafitis and Raiders. And on that note, in things to watch out for, keep an eye on your minimap for raids, specifically because of, the Raider, it's in the fucking name. It's a one population unit. It's very easy to mass. It's very easy to mass. So just keep an eye on your mini-map looking for raiders that are trying to take out your settlers, and that will help you a lot against any Hausa players. Now, once Hausa gets to the Third Age, they are very likely to send a cannoneer shipment. This is a mercenary shipment that costs them influence instead of coin. That ships cannoneers, which are very powerful units. It's like they're like mercenary obus guns, essentially. And then the massive Falk Pop. So Hausa and Ethiopia both have access to an upgrade that allows them to get falconets from their palace. However, a lot of people generally don't do this because the falconets are very, very expensive on your influence and will just soak it up right away. But what will happen is the Hausa player will make an army and they'll push with it, and they'll be really focused on the battlefield, and they might forget about their economy a little bit, and then they're starting to get pushed back, and they think to themselves, what can I do, what can I do, what can I do, and then they realize that because they've been so focused on the battle, they have a massive stockpile of influence, and they'll be like, oh, I might just make like 5 falconets, and then they'll use all of their influence at once, and that's what's going to happen. So just keep an eye out for that, especially after long, drawn-out battles, that you might see some like a 5 Falk pop from Hausa. And that just about covers it. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Have